us off with attendance?
I would love to. Becky Beisa will be in shortly. Brian Davis.
Present.
Scott Gergen.
Here.
Lisa Hedin.
Here.
Dave Pemble.
Here.
Stephanie Mom here, and Kelsey Waits.
Here. All right. So moving on to a motion to approve the agenda and the table file.
So move.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right. Motion carries and agenda approved. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 9th regular board meeting?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. So first up is the election of officers to the board. So at this point, nominations are now in order for office of chair. So do we have any nominations? Brian?
I'd like to nominate Kelsey Waits to continue in her current role as chair.
Okay. Do we have any further nominations? Okay. Again, are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, so with that, we will close nominations. I guess all those in favor of having me continue as chair, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So next up is nominations are in order for the office of vice chair. So do we have any nominations? Brian?
I nominate Dave Pemble to continue his role as vice chair.
Okay, are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Okay, with no other nominations on the floor, we will close the nominations. So all those in favor of having Dave continue as vice chair, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, there we go. Dave will continue in his role as vice chair. So nominations are now in order for the office of clerk. Do we have any nominations for clerk?
I
Dave?
nominate Stephanie Mom.
Okay. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Okay. With that, we will close the nominations for clerk. So all those in favor of having Stephanie continue as clerk, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. Motion carries. So Stephanie will continue on as clerk. And so lastly, nominations are now in order for the office of treasurer. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Brian.
Okay. Do we have any further nominations? Any further nominations? All right. With that, we will close nominations for treasurer. And all those in favor of having Brian Davis continue as treasurer, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Opposed, same sign. All right, Brian, congratulations. You will continue on as treasurer.
Thank you.
All right. So next up is one we have not done before, which is the designation of a board member to the Minnesota State High School League. Becky did reach out to me earlier when she knew that she would be late and did mention that she would potentially be interested in this as far as, I know she's not here yet, but she will be in a minute. So I'm not necessarily incredibly clear on what the role of this position is. And I tried to look into it. Superintendent McDowell, could you give us some more insight?
Sure. Based on the research that we did on this one, what we're doing is nominating a board member to be the contact for the Minnesota State High School League should they be in a position where they need to vote on something. And because we are a member district of the Minnesota State High School League, we do qualify for a vote in according to their bylaws. And so if anything major comes down where we would be able to be in a position to provide input or a vote, the person designated as the board member would be the person to vote on behalf of the school board for that vote. It doesn't have to do anything. Trent will still be, you know, really connected with the Minnesota State High School League and all that, but it is a designation that we need to provide.
In the past, who's done it, or was there not a position?
I believe we haven't done it ever in the past.
Okay.
Okay, and so then I apologize. I should have clarified this with you beforehand. Do we need to take nominations for this in the same way that we've taken the other roles, or will this be, okay.
Yes.
Okie dokie. So do we have any nominations for the board member to the Minnesota State High School League? So I guess I would nominate, oh, Brian.
No, go ahead, Kelsey. I've been doing now nominating.
Oh, I was going to say I would nominate Becky Beisel to be the board member representative. Are there any other nominations? Okay, any other nominations? All right, so with that, then we will close the nominations for this board member position. So all those in favor of having Becky take on this role, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. So we'll let Becky know when she signs on. So at this point, we will recognize our visitors. And hopefully, here we go. So Melanie Peters has asked to address the board tonight. So welcome, Melanie. Oh, you're still connecting to audio, so I'll give you a minute. All right. So when you're ready, feel free to address the board.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak tonight. My name is Melanie Peters, and I just wanted to speak a little bit on tonight's agenda item of combining the polling locations for the 2021 school district elections. I would like the school board to consider going back to the 2013 model, which included the 5 rural locations. I think that decreasing the rural polling locations and combining all into the city of Hastings has an overall negative impact on the Hastings School District because it disengages voters and further disconnects rural families from the district. Eliminating those rural polls creates a hardship for voters, with the greatest impact being on the elderly and farmers. The increased distance to the polling location is a difficulty for the elderly. And then elections take place in the middle of harvest, and the difference between going to a local poll versus going into Hastings to vote is significant. When looking at some of the voting data, I believe it shows rural voters have disengaged from school district elections. Up until 2013, there were at least 5 different rural polling locations in Meesville, Hampton, Vermillion, Ravenna Township, and Marchand Township. These polling locations were already combined polling locations with voters from Douglas Township, Hampton Township, Vermillion Township, and the city of New Trier voting at these locations. As you know, the Minnesota Secretary of State website provides access to election details for all school district elections. And while it doesn't provide an exact number of voters for each election, the number of voters can be estimated by combining the yes and no votes for ballot questions. So based on these election results, between 1,100 and 1,300 rural voters participated in each school district election between 2007 and 2013. The overall number of voters is estimated at 6,200 in 2007 and steadily decreasing to 4,500 in 2013. However, during that time, the percentage of rural voters in the overall vote increased from 20% in 2007 to an estimated 30% in 2013. So I think that shows that even though the overall number of voters were decreasing in that time period, the number of rural voters was being sustained. The first election with the current model with the combined polling was in 2015, but there wasn't a yes/no question on the ballot. So it's just too difficult to tell how many voters turned out for that election. But then that brings us to 2017. And in 2017, there were yes/no questions on the ballot, and the voter estimate was around 4,300 voters. This lower voter turnout was the lowest that I had seen in all the years that I looked at the data. So was this lower turnout due to fewer rural voters? I think there's evidence that points to yes. In 2017, there were 2 yes/no questions on the ballot. Both questions were related to funding, and a yes vote would increase property taxes. Both questions passed with a higher percentage of yes votes than any similar funding question that had passed since 2007. And if you isolate the rural votes on similar questions between 2007 and 2013, you'll find that rural voters consistently vote no to questions that increase property taxes. I understand that combining polling locations saves the district election costs, and elections are expensive. I hope it's not also a strategic decision to decrease the strength of rural voters who are less likely to support funding questions. Personally, I do support funding the school district, but philosophically, I don't agree with a strategy that would limit an opposing viewpoint. This district, like most in Minnesota right now, is facing a financial strain due to COVID and other funding factors. The last time there was a funding question included in a school district election was 2017. It seems likely that there will be funding questions on the upcoming ballot, and I think the rural voters deserve to have their voice heard. Also, I think that combining the polling locations can isolate and disconnect the rural families from the district. As a board, you have a difficult job of meeting the needs of students and families within the city limits of Hastings, but also in the large rural area that's serviced by this district, and that's a hard job. Over time, more families are choosing to open and enroll their children in other districts, specifically in the rural areas where families are choosing to send their children to Randolph, Rosemount, Farmington, Cannon Falls, and Red Wing. Based on the data on the Department of Ed website, in 2013, there were 138 students from Hastings open enrolling into one of those districts I just mentioned. That increased to 196 students open enrolling to one of those districts by 2020. And the greatest jump is with Randolph, which saw an increase of students who were open enrolled from Hastings, jumping from 86 in 2013 to 117 in 2020. And it just makes me wonder, what's the overall financial impact of losing rural students to other districts? Combining polling locations certainly can't be directly attributed to rural students open enrolling to other districts, but I don't think it helps with that situation either. Thank you for your time. I don't want to take up any more of it, but just please, as you consider this agenda item and combining the polling locations later on in the meeting, please consider this information and reinstating those rural locations for the 2021 elections. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Melanie.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks.
All right, and so the way that we have it set up based on our policy is that we'll wait as a board to discuss this until we get to that position in our agenda, which now my agenda closed. So next on the agenda, also recognizing thank you to everyone watching from home and kind of taking part in the meeting. I appreciate it. And Becky has joined the meeting too. So we can make sure to reflect that too in the meeting minutes. All right, so first up tonight is announcements and recognitions.
And because of the organizational meeting, we didn't bring anyone on as an official recognition, but I would like to shout out again just to our entire staff as we move through, again, another change that you're going to hear more about tonight. Day in and day out, our staff, everyone from our bus drivers to cooks to custodians to teachers to paras to our administrators, just everyone, support staff. As you know, in your work worlds, the school world, every day, it's a constant trying to figure out how to do the next thing, do it right, and make it the best it can be for our kids. So just a shout out to just our entire staff. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you. As we switch to this full in-person at the elementary level, I know that we'll be working on a lot more flexibility with our staff and kind of figuring out how we move forward. So we're very lucky to have such a great staff in the district. So we have items for discussion, and first up is board committee membership for the 2020 calendar year. So typically at the organizational meeting, we kind of after the meeting, we give suggestions or requests for what committees we want to be on. Since we went through and really narrowed our committees down, and because MSBA suggests doing committees at this organizational meeting, we thought that it would be worth potentially seeing if we could just knock that out today, since there are really only 4 committees at this point, the standing committees. So we have the mission statements that were drafted by the current heads of each committee, and then Stephanie and I also worked to try to come up with a mission statement for that community engagement committee based on how we had discussed that at previous meetings. And so if you just want to take a look at that, and obviously that can be tweaked and we can make changes if we need to. And then also attached is board committee assignments, and it's really just thoughts and recommendations and completely flexible. I tried to keep everyone, if they were already on one of these committees, on it. And Scott and Becky actually hadn't been on one of these 4 committees. And so trying to work things around to get them into the committee placements and how to do this now with the new layout we have. So are there any questions, comments, thoughts about any of that? Things that we'd want to see changed?
I'm fine
Scott?
I'm fine with being on the finance committee, given that all the negotiation committees are gone and the healthcare committee is gone as well. So, yep, I think that'll be a good meaty committee to be on.
Yeah, that seemed pretty similar to doing negotiations, which is really talking about finances and where that lies. So, but yeah, and if there's changes or people want to swap it around, like I said, this was just kind of giving us something to start a conversation based on. So. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other. Stephanie?
Sorry, I do have one question. Is Dave, are you going to still continue being part of ISD 917?
Yes, I am. We've got a lot of work to do there. We're going to go start a search committee for a new superintendent.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 917 term is a little bit different than our board committee term. So it doesn't, I mean, it's a good thing to check in terms of manageable workloads, but that term just doesn't align.
Yep, theirs is there is July 1 to June 30.
Yeah, and if you'll notice with these smaller committees, board members are either on 1 or 2 committees, that we're not having that. I don't know, sometimes we had been up to 6 or 7. So this will let us really dig into that governance work and focus on that aspect of what we should be doing. So, but like I said, I mean, this isn't something we need to vote on, so we can continue discussing this, or if we see any changes that need to be made. Superintendent McDowell? Oh, you unmuted, so I wasn't sure if you had something.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
I just
Any
want
other
to say,
questions, Lisa?
I just want to say with regard to that community engagement committee,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's a fine run at the first mission statement, because I think we don't know what it is yet.
Mhm.
The way it stands, I do think we're going to have to work on, I just want to remind us that we need to be working on refining that statement over the next year, because really, if you say communication between the board and the community, and then you put that in a committee, that's a little unclear how that relates to like our individual relationships
Right.
with the community, you know, and in the past, yeah. So it's just I mean, I think I understand the intent. I think we all understand the intent, which is to be proactive and consistent in our outreach.
Yep. And I
And
think that's a
it's-
really great and important point.
I think it's a good starting point, what was put down.
Yeah, that's what I guess we were almost thinking. It was kind of a rough draft. And then as the committee got pulled together and found their footing, that they could then refine it as a committee to see, I guess, what that's looking like and figure that out from there. But as a starting point to just say, here's what we're thinking to get us going. But I think that's a great point to acknowledge. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? All right, then for now, I guess we will go forward with this plan. All right, so administrative reports.
Yeah, so before I go into sharing our learning model plan, Kathy Mullen is on with us tonight, so we'll see if we can bring her up. But I just wanted to officially introduce her to everybody on the board, since we're still in that mode of not meeting face to face. But everyone, please welcome Kathy Mullen, our new Director of Human Resources. She's coming to us from Stillwater with a ton of experience in human resources and has hit the ground running already. Helping many of our administrators and staff in the short time she's been with us already.
Welcome.
Great, welcome.
Yep, good
Thank
evening.
you very much. Thank you.
So I'm going to share my screen. I just have a quick learning model presentation because I want to make sure that, are we there? Everybody's got it? Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
All right. I just want to, again, provide another round of clarity, and for those people watching, you know, so that we're continuing to communicate as best as we can with the changes that are happening and kind of the why behind it. And so just a reminder to begin with that we're really looking at this dial of progression from distance learning to hybrid to traditional. And one thing that we became aware of as we started to announce some changes was that while we're in it every day and we understand what in-person learning means and what hybrid means, that people that are not don't necessarily know. And so I thought it would be good to just remind people that when we talk about distance learning, we're talking about the 4 days of virtual learning, and Wednesdays are flex days. When we are in hybrid, that's that AABB schedule where Wednesdays are flex days. Kids are in 2 days a week. And then in-person learning is really back to 5 days a week, full-time, all that's going on. And our students who have signed up for Online Academy, that Hastings Online Academy, their model doesn't change. So regardless of what all the other students are in, they're in Hastings Online Academy all the time. So just to remind people that that's kind of where we are. So bringing people back, the 17th of December was the big announcement from the governor. And basically what was announced was that elementary students can begin in-person full-time learning at some point after break. And that was the timing of that is dependent upon what was actually announced by district. And so our earliest time is the 19th. Some requirements in order to do this, we have to roll in grade levels, which means that we can only bring in a maximum of 3 grade levels at a time per building. And so we're really talking elementary. K5 is considered elementary, and we can bring in 3 grade levels at a time. 2 weeks later, we can bring in 3 more grade levels within that elementary grade band. Social distancing changes. So we aren't at 6 feet when we bring the elementary kids back in. We're actually down to 3 feet. And the interesting thing there is that it no longer is a requirement, it's a recommendation. So as best as you can, keep kids at 3 feet, but there's no requirement to always have them at 3 feet. That 50% capacity of classroom space that we had in hybrid that we talked so much about is now gone for elementary in person. And it's important to note that nothing changed at this point for secondary. So secondary is still following all of those guidances. So with regard to our numbers and how we decide when to bring students back, and having to work with our regional support team to make decisions with regard to when we can bring secondary back in. So that was really the gist of what the governor's announcement was. So for us, what that means is our timeline to shift for elementary is January 11th. So next week, our special education students will begin coming into buildings, K-12 actually, in small groups. So these are our most needy students who benefit from having that face-to-face interaction based on their goals, based on their IEPs. That's going to start happening actually next week. Then the 13th and 14th, we're going to take 2 transition days for all K4 teachers to help them get ready on the 13th and 14th. And that'll prep us for January 19th when K2, so kindergarten, first grade, second grade, is going to move to in-person full-time 5 days a week. Then, as you can see, we get to the end of January and we are going to have 2 transition days again for 5th grade. And we are going to, on February 1st, move 3rd and 4th grade to in-person, just like K2, but we're also going to move 5th grade back to hybrid. And there's some reasons for that is we talked about putting 5th grade in person, but what happens is they're still attached to that 6-8 schedule. So if we had 5th grade in person every day, and then we brought 6th grade in, 7th grade, 8th grade in, which are still bound by those guidelines, we may be in a spot where we're running 2 different schedules. Well, we're running in-person 5th grade and hybrid 6th through 8th, which kind of causes a mess for transportation and some other things as we do scheduling. So we're going to bring them in hybrid. An important note is that school start and end times are going to remain the same as we move through this progression. Just to touch on secondary, again, the guidance hasn't changed. We're going to plan to continue our distance learning format through February. We're watching our numbers. There's a huge focus on the week of January 25th, which is about the 2.5-week mark after winter break, to see if something spikes or if we're going to stay on track with what we've been seeing so far. We're still going to plan to be able to give people 2 weeks notice ahead of any changes. And again, January 11th is when special education will be bringing even the secondary kids in for those center-based programs for the high school and middle school as well. Now, I did ask both Trent and Carrie to be on because we do have, as everyone knows, we've got some changes to athletics and to some facilities. So I'll just touch on really 10,000-foot level. And if there's more specific questions, I've asked those 2 to be on to answer them. But essentially, just so folks are aware, our winter sports at the high school, all 11 of them, started on Monday, and our competitions begin the 14th. They're working out details right now as far as spectators and all of what's going to happen for those competitions. I think there's athletic director meeting tomorrow where they're going to try and finalize what that actually is going to look like. And then middle school, what we've decided is we're going to be able to bring girls and boys basketball in on the 19th, just as an in-house piece. No travel, no competitions outside of the district. That'll start up on the 19th. And then just to touch base on facilities, all of our rentals reopened on Monday this week. We do have mask protocols in place, and an important thing to note is that capacity was reduced from 250 down to 100 for each of the rental pieces. And so those are really the updates. That's what I wanted to have as my superintendent's report today. I don't know if there are questions for me or for Carrie or for Trent, but I'd open it up to that at this time.
Lisa?
Thank you. This is a question for Brittany, who I know is not on the call, but it's just to float it out there.
Sure.
It seems to me that when the learning model changes, the biggest questions, at least the ones that I see on social media, are about the food service.
Sure.
It took weeks for people to get comfortable with food service and taking home meals from the building. It continues to seem to be challenging for people to manage the food service that's being delivered. I anticipate a change again when we start putting little humans on the buses. That like takes up space and time and commitment. So I just any little preview that we can give the community about food service, I think would be great.
We can, and we have Jen Subert on here as well. And so magically she will appear.
She magically appeared.
Team
Her
Hastings,
home
here we
office that looks exactly like her work office.
Yeah, right. So I could try, but I'll let Jen because she knows the finite details of what changes because there are going to be some.
Right. And I'll really try to keep it high level because we're kind of working out some of the details at this point still. But for the week of January 11th, we're going to continue with meal delivery on the buses, afternoon bus stops. So it's starting on the 19th. We'll no longer be able to utilize the transportation. So once we start using buses for kids, there's going to be special ed, there's going to be, K through 2 coming in. We thought about, trying to use the buses for maybe an extra week or an extra week or two, but eventually we're just not going to be able to continue that anyways. So starting the 19th, it'll be pickup. We'll have sites. We'll use all of our sites and we'll do a variety of times so that hopefully we can make it accessible to everyone. So we'll have some morning times. We'll have some that go as late as like 5:30 at night. And then we have kind of a couple different options where they'll be able to pick up each day if they want. Otherwise, we can do it where they pick up just twice a week so that they don't have to come in like every day and get them. And then the third thing is that families that have a student attending in person, that student could take meals home for a sibling. So those are kind of where we're at right now.
That's perfect. That's the exact high level of answer that I was hoping to hear, just so that people understand, the timeline of the afternoon bus delivery and then when they should start to be thinking about making switches. So,
yep.
Perfect.
So
Thank you very much.
Really the week of the 18th is when it'll change.
Start to switch. Okay.
And I believe that'll be part of our Raider updates as we move into this as well. And also, now that we're kind of getting communications back coordinated, I'm sure we can throw that out on our social media, on Facebook and all that. So we are sure that many families see the way food's going to roll out once we get transportation up and running again.
Yep. Thank you. And I'm confident that's true. It just does seem to be a thing that families have been challenged by.
Absolutely.
And then the second question that I have, and this is administrative. So we just last month passed a policy articulating 5th grade as secondary. And I'm very comfortable with them coming back at hybrid from a planning perspective. I think that's very valuable. But is there any concern with our policy not aligning with the state's definition of elementary and us choosing to bring kids back when we've been told bring back elementary? Or is nobody going to notice?
No, because the while we designate fifth grade as part of our secondary schooling, the state sees fifth grade as elementary for purposes of calculation. Does that answer your question?
Right on the nose. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Good.
Yep. I had a similar question written down, so I'm glad that that got brought up. I was also wondering, just out of curiosity, if in making this switch, we've seen a difference in how many students are enrolled in the online academy, whether that number has increased for parents who aren't comfortable going full distance, or if maybe it's a wash because some parents want to go join and some parents want to come back. But I am curious how that's.
Yeah. We've had at the elementary level, now that we've announced this, we've had a total of, if I have the numbers correct, roughly 40 families that have responded to the request to make a change. Of the 40, roughly 30 of them have requested to leave online academy and go in person. And so that's great. And the way we've got things staffed and set up, we're able to accommodate that. I was just talking with the elementary principals this afternoon, and they're making some staffing adjustments, and we're going to be able to accommodate that as we shift. So there has been some change, and we're able to adapt.
Great.
Are there any questions for Trent or Carrie?
Brian?
Thanks, Kelsey. Just real quick, it's a real quick question. I saw that the number dropped from 250 to 100. Is that up to and including Governor Walz's adjustment today?
We'll look at Governor Walz's adjustment that he made today. I haven't seen anything yet, and then we'll update that just as we have been doing.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know because Governor Walz went from 100 to 150. So
yeah, we'll make that adjustment too. We'll review that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Carrie. I just didn't know if it included you guys or if it was just gyms or how that. I know it's changing every 5 minutes. I get it. Believe me, I get it. Thank you.
All right. Carrie, Trent, do you have anything to add? Nope. All right. Well, thank you for being here then. There aren't any other questions with that.
Okay, sorry. I did have one more question. And I'm sure we'll see something from Lori, but that's around the use of the senior center. Do you know anything that's shifting on that, Carrie? I think
we're going to slowly start opening up the senior center starting on January 11th. So you'll see information coming out that's from Lori Thrush to our senior center members.
Again, just so people can start to anticipate that some of that will shift again on the 11th. Okay. Thank you.
All right, with that, then I think we'll thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Trent. And I will bring up Jen Reichel, who has the second part of our administrative report, because the other big thing we've got going on is, as some of you are aware, is we're piecing together and have a plan in place for our official Hastings Online Academy as we move out of COVID. And so we've asked Jen to kind of give you a preview of what that looks like, because later in the meeting tonight, I'm going to ask you to approve a letter of support, because that's one of the requirements as we put our application in to the state, is to make sure that we have a letter of support from the school board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jen Reichel to give you the latest and greatest on online learning.
Thanks for allowing me to be with you tonight. I'm going to quick pull up my slide deck, just a couple of slides to keep me on track for tonight. So as Bob alluded to, sorry, Dr. McDowell has alluded to, currently our online, our HOA program is allowable to us due to the pandemic. The state is allowing for online learning without any sort of application process. And we recognized as we've made our way through this part of the school year that there are some students who find that online learning is a meaningful option for them. And so because of that, we wanted to look beyond the pandemic and make sure that we have a viable online learning option for those kids and families who may appreciate it. And so a few of the things that are outlining our vision for this, we recognize that without an online learning, that we're featuring a one-size-fits-all model, and that doesn't work for everyone. An online learning model provides flexibility, flexible classes, that daily schedule is flexible, there's flexibility in the dates, and we want some flexibility in our planning. We also know that as a district, we want to provide a solid educational program for a wide variety of kiddos, and we recognize that we have some great technology and systems in place that we want to continue to use. So we put together a team who have really been working cohesively to draft our application. We have members, all of the members of our middle school and high school admin team. I'm on there, Bob's there, and then we've been in contact with Jeff Plowman, who is the MDE contact for online learning. And then beyond that core group who's doing the actual drafting of the application, we've been consulting with our HOA teachers, with our guidance counselors, with special ed leadership, and then through some surveys, we've included input what we're learning from our kids and parents about our online program this year. In the plan, which is a pretty considerable document, MDE really likes to make sure that we put all of our ducks in a row in order to support how we move forward. They ask us to answer questions about our leadership and planning approach, how we're going to maintain integrity to the program and hold ourselves accountable. What does the curriculum and course design look like? They want to better understand how we're going to approach supporting our faculty, our students, and our families throughout the process. And then how are we going to go about evaluating and making efforts toward continuous improvement of our program. And so as we look at an anticipated timeline, what we learned from Jeff Plowman at MDE is that this isn't a submit your application and you either get in the yes bucket or the no bucket. It's you either get approved or you aren't quite yet approved, but they give you an opportunity to revise your application. So unless you're way off base, they anticipate they're going to support applications that come to them. So tonight I'm coming to you to share this quick update. And like Bob shared, we're going to seek that letter of support from you. In late January, we're going to have a meeting with Jeff and his team from the state to review our draft application. And he's going to help us, or that team is going to help us really look at where do we have additional details that we need to better explain, and where are we right on track with what they're hoping to hear from us. And then in February, we anticipate submitting that revised application for review. MDE has said that it can take up to 90 days to approve that application, but we anticipate that we're going to be approved. So as materials are coming out from the high school for registration, that will already be publicized so that we don't have to retroactively go back and say, okay, now that you registered, we're going to ask you to register again. We're just going to be forward thinking in there. And that is really a quick snapshot of how we're moving, or where we are in the process for our online learning program. What questions might you have for me or someone else who might not be on this meeting right now?
Lisa?
Thanks, Jen. I really love that we're taking this proactive approach, because I think we've learned a lot about how models do and do not fit various people. As hard as we might think, well, good heavens, nobody would ever choose that, except for the people who would never choose what we've chosen. Do you anticipate, do I understand that this online academy, you're making a choice to be a full online student? Okay, I just wanted to be 100% clear about that. It's not It's not
a partial.
some word other than hybrid. It's not a pick
Right.
and choose. Okay.
So
Thank
right
you.
now, as we consider, we know that we want to start small so that we can do a really good job. As we look to the future of this, I think we can imagine a time where students might choose to do some of their classes face-to-face and some of them in an online way. We're just not ready to manage all of the complexities of that until we know that we're doing a really solid job in online learning before we take it that next step.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you explain to me is there likely to be a place for the Alternative Learning Center to fit into an online, not the entirety of the Alternative Learning Center, but for students who are choosing the ALC, would they have an option of choosing an HOA?
So I think Todd is already using Edgenuity for credit recovery, and he is looking at the merits of that online program and how does that fit with the current clientele of the ALC. And I think that those people who are intimately involved with that program really need to look at, is this a good fit for our kids and how do we support them if it is? But we know that it's an option.
Okay, good. I'm glad that there's a way to make it an option for them, or we anticipate that. Terrific. Thank you.
Scott?
With the current Hastings Online Academy, there is a touch point with a Hastings staff, but the classes themselves are taught by non-Hastings staff.
So except for one particular advanced placement class, the instructor of record is a Hastings teacher. And so, yes, the instruction that's in Edgenuity, that online package that we've purchased to help us deliver these online lessons, the videos are created outside of Hastings and delivered in this system. That touch point continues to be part of our plan to make sure that kids have access to being part of Hastings schools. I think one of the things that we've talked about is that Edgenuity, for some content areas, it's a really solid program. And for some of our departments, they feel like it just doesn't do an adequate job. And I'll point out global languages. They have seen that they know they can do a much better job developing their course in Schoology and delivering it in that way rather than leaning into Edgenuity. And so we look at this online program being able to use Edgenuity and or Schoology, depending on how teachers look at what's the best fit for kids as far as content and, you know, aligning to state standards and making sure that kids are kind of on pace if they choose to flow in and out of this online program. And so we may see that there are some courses that are completely Edgenuity, some courses that are completely Schoology, and some blend. And over time, we may see that shift to doing more in-house development of coursework in Schoology. But we want to make sure that we sustain the program that we have this year, so we aren't asking our teachers to develop everything brand new, but incrementally over time develop those things that they feel like we can do a better job if we do it our way.
Perfect. Yeah, you nailed the question I was driving to, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's important too to note on that that's what MDE recommends, is that you start with a I don't want to call it a canned program, but you start with a solution and you work towards getting your own. So I think as a group, we were happy to hear that because we were on track with that line of thinking.
Dave?
I guess the question I would pose, what's the financial commitment, or do we have any need for different technologies, things that we need to purchase to get a startup going? Is there a big cost into that or not?
That's a great question. So MDE doesn't require us to have any different financial supports. And as we have been, as we started walking down that path, Bob was pretty clear with our team that we want this as cost neutral as we can. So we're not developing a whole brand new system that needs, a person who's in charge. We're looking at how do we manage this in-house. We're not going to need to hire any additional teachers because they're our kids that we're just, shifting from one form of education to another. And so really our goal is to be cost neutral.
Scott?
At the high school level, thinking about some of the AP classes that are taught in a interdisciplinary manner, how would something like that be handled, not only within the online academy, but how would a student be able to flow potentially in and out of whether it would be Calc, AB, leading up to Calc BC, and or your language arts and your social sciences, being taught in an interdisciplinary manner?
It's a really great question, Scott. And I think as we have looked at this application, it doesn't ask for that level of detail. And I think those sorts of conversations will happen at the building level to figure out how is it that we want to meet the needs of our kids. I was talking with a couple of math teachers today and really thinking about, is Edgenuity better or is our coursework better? And those decisions don't need to come from this team that's writing the application. But as we move toward the implementation, those can be building owned decisions about how do we best manage this. I would put in a note that says our application that we're submitting is going to be for students in grades 5 through 12. We're not intending to start an elementary program, particularly because of that cost neutral piece, knowing that it would be very unlikely that we would get a critical mass of, let's say, second graders from one building where we could allocate that one teacher and then manage it across the district. We know that we're going to put that out for 5 through 12, but then the actual implementation needs to consider how many kids choose that option. If we have 3 5th grade kiddos who want to be in online learning, we're probably not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to dedicate an FTE for those kids. So we'll have to make those decisions after that registration process happens.
Okay, 3 things to continue on here, and a couple of them are probably along that same vein, which are, so the first place I stop is AVID. So our students that are in the AVID program, to ensure that they are able to flow in, flow out, or still be applying the AVID principles that they're learning here at Hastings in the online academy. And I know that's not part of the application, but it's just something buzzing around in my head. The second place that I stop is how do we ensure that we are getting this in front of our parents that have chosen to homeschool their student, because this may be an opportunity to re-engage them into the district. And again, I know that's not part of the application. And then the third place I stop is for those items where they simply are, for those classes that are simply not able to be replicated in an online or at-home environment, like wood shop, metal shop, automotives, et cetera, will we be able to flex with those students if there were to be a student that would want to take their core disciplinary classes in an online environment and yet come in for their elective courses and be in the electronics class or the photography class or, any number of our arts classes where we have all of the infrastructure in place at Hastings.
Yeah, your 2 of your 3 questions are definitely ones that we have begun to grapple with, the Avid conversation and those courses that are not replicable in an online environment. And I think as we bring to completion our application, we'll have some more clear answers. But my short answer is, I'm not quite sure. I appreciate that you've talked about homeschool and making sure that we get the word out to those families. And I think we have some mechanisms in our district where we can make sure that we do a solid job of communicating that option to those families. So thank you for that.
So I would add just to that, Jen, actually today when I was meeting with the secondary principals, that topic came up. And so the secondary principals are going to be reaching out to Missy Williams here. They want to locate our families who aren't with us this year and figure out a way to directly reach out to those families. So the pieces are coming together. I mean, I would agree with Jen. They're great questions. They're the things that are spinning with us right now, and really, the team has been tasked with. I mean, in the middle of COVID, I've asked them to put together an online learning program, and they're doing a phenomenal job and really hitting all the bases on this thing and really trying to make sure we've got a solid foundation.
Yeah, and one of the things I think about when I think about the online learning is that right now we've designed our online learning to work for all of our kiddos, because that's the situation we're in with COVID, is that we're doing the best we possibly can to make sure we reach all of those kiddos. But when we talk about creating an online academy that's going to continue on after this, we're really building that for a very select group of kiddos. And those are the ones that we saw thrive in this online environment, who, it's better for their emotional health, for example, to be working from home, potentially homeschoolers that get brought in. I know as someone with a homeschooler who would not do well in the one-size-fits-all model, she is absolutely loving the online academy. And so it's really for students like her that don't necessarily fit the typical model that we have. And so instead of building this to work for every student in the district, we're really building it for those students that the regular district model is not working. And so I think that is a little bit different than what we're doing right now. And I'm really excited about this. I know Abby is really excited about this because she feels connected to the district in a way that she hasn't been able to before, and is also really excited to not be in loud schools. So, with those sensory issues, it's a really big deal. So I think it's great that we're trying to figure this out, because I know that we are not the only family that struggles with that. And so having this option, I think, will be an asset.
Yeah, we really have two, I think, huge programmatic positives coming out of COVID. And one is the fact that we've gone one-to-one K-12. And that hurdle is done. And the second is that we're well on the way to this online learning option for our kids as we come out of this. And it's going to be huge, I think, in helping us. Those two things are going to be huge in helping make sure that we are meeting the needs of more kids in our system when they need it.
Scott?
I would say, along with reaching out to the homeschool people, I like the idea much more of actively reaching out to them and one-to-one, almost recruiting, but at a minimum, making sure that they understand what we have to offer. Another group, okay, and I'm going back to the studies that we did where we called people and we said, this is my early years on the board, where we called families that were in our district, had a student of school age in qualified to be in our district, but chose not to be in our district. So, to the earlier, our guest who spoke to us. So your Randolph, your Farmington, your Hampton, that area, that would be another group that with this, this may be an attractive option, because what we heard previously when we called was, why aren't you coming to Hastings? And it was, my student, we live right on the boundary with South Wash or with Rosemount. And my students' friends all live on the other side of the road and they go to South Wash or Rosemount, so therefore we're going there. Or we live south of Hampton and we work south of Hampton. So coming to Hastings is the opposite direction. So therefore we choose a different school. This may be an opportunity for us to reclaim some of those students and bring some of the programs that I know that these other districts cannot offer. Show choir and our athletic programs and all the cool things that we have to offer in Hastings that would then be open to them. So kind of twofold, homeschool and students that are choosing a different district may be opportunities for us.
Yeah, and that actually then made me think, so if we're thinking about who our target population is with this, if our target population is that we're looking to potentially bring homeschoolers in, it may be worth reaching out to homeschoolers who already, a lot of them are already using online programs, homeschool curriculums, and saying, what is it about your curriculum that you like? What could our curriculum offer that would bring you in? And kind of use their knowledge, because they are already using online programs, and see what would bring those families in if there is something
Right. Yeah,
that may be knowledge we can tap into.
And by no means am I intimating that this will be a silver bullet for all of these families, because there's many reasons that families choose to homeschool. There's many reasons that families choose to enroll their student in a different district or enroll their student from a different district into Hastings. I'm merely saying I would like us not to pass this opportunity up without hitting it aggressively.
Yeah, great points. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right. Wait, Lisa.
In your conversations with MDE, Jen, is this an action that many districts are taking? I think I think good. We should talk to people that live in our district geographically but are choosing not to enroll here. I wonder if everybody's going to start offering an online academy and they're all going to be like 1 year good at it. What are you hearing from MDE on the choices that other districts are making?
I don't recall that we asked Jeff who else is a work in progress, although I do think we were probably beginning the process before many other districts were. And we're trying to have this in the January, February timeframe where there might be other districts who look for a March, April submission. So we might be ahead of them, but I don't know.
Okay, that's sort of a curiosity question, and I don't need to know the answer. We'll just watch it play out. And I don't want to intimate that we're going to try and do something that we're only 1 year good at. I think we're really solid, and Kelsey's points are valid. This is about providing a way for a student to engage with education. That's not the way we've done it before, and that should prove to be better for them. So even if other people are doing it, I still want to do it. I still want Hastings kids to be served by Hastings schools.
There are multiple other districts in the same spot we are. They're looking at coming out of this thing with an online program.
And I think there's other districts that were there before us.
Yeah.
I think Lakeville was one of those that had a very robust online offering.
Yeah, we've been in touch with a number of districts who've been doing this for a while so that we could learn from them. What did you make sure you put in your application? What's working? What do you wish that you had known before you started, so we can learn through those hiccups?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Jen, for giving us that update. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay. And so with that, we can move on to action items. And so the first is the consent agenda. And so just so the community knows, consent agenda items can be seen on Board Book, and there's a link to that on our website. And I really want to point that out today because the consent agenda items are a little different than usual, given that this is an organizational meeting rather than a regular board meeting. So one of those things in there for full transparency is approving board member compensation. It's also looking at approving dental insurance that board members can sign into our dental insurance program. Joint powers purchasing agreement, who our lawyers are. So it gets really boring too. So
just to be clear, the dental and benefit buy into is literally a buy into if you are a board member. It is not supplied. There is no supplement. We would pay the full district price. Just so everybody's clear on that.
I just want full transparency so people don't think that we're slipping something in the consent agenda there. So but legal counsel, who our auditors are, kind of all that business. So again, it's all on board book. Scott?
There is an item in there that I would like to move out of the consent agenda and into individual action item.
Okay.
That is item 8.A.2, establish the 2020 board member compensation / benefit participation.
Okay. So do we need a motion to pull that out, or this is the first time we've pulled something out of the consent agenda?
No, as I read it, any one board member can make the request, and then as chair, you can choose to address it immediately, or you can move it down in the agenda. It's up to you. I'm proposing that we move it down with our individual action items outside of the consent agenda.
Okay. No, I actually had considered doing the same thing myself. So there's no issue. We'll move that down to the items for individual action there then.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right. So then with that movement, do we have a motion to approve the items left in the consent agenda?
So move.
Is there a second? Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, same sign. All right, motion carries. So let me reload my meeting here to see what order it is all put in now. All right, so for the items for individual action, the first one will be the 2020 board member compensation benefit participation. So Scott, did you want to talk about this a little bit?
Certainly. Again, having been on the board for a while, I've been through 2 different fairly major budget cuts. One was my first year on the board, and the last one we just finished up. With that, and with the situation that we're in with COVID, with the contract that we negotiated with our administrators, with the contract that we will be negotiating with our teachers, with the uncertainty that we have around the legislature next year as they begin these pieces. So these are all the warning signs that I've talked about. You know, you've heard me mention these before. The $200,000 that we allocated out of the fund balance to help us balance our budget. I would like to propose that, and this is we do this every year, but I would like to propose that for the calendar year 2021, that we set the board compensation at 0.
All right, is there any discussion around that? And so I think one of the reasons that board member compensation exists is for people who are, say, need to take time off in order to come to a board meeting so that it can kind of cover that, or for people who have young children and maybe need to pay for babysitters and things like that. So it's really to make it more accessible for folks. So if there are issues with that, that is something that I think we should talk about. I I don't have an issue doing that for this year. Dave?
I too don't really have an issue. I think though, technically, we would probably have to have some type of like $1 compensation or some minimum amount.
Yeah, I looked at the statute. I don't believe there's any, we can set it to whatever we deem zero
There
or,
are some
or above.
There are some boards in the state that do not have compensation.
As a matter of fact, when I ran for the board, I had no idea that there was compensation. So
neither did I.
That was quite a surprise to me. But I just, the more I thought about this and the more, we talked about this previously, we all just went through the budget cuts and we saw what was cut and we know what the impact is to our students, to our staff, to our community. And I just feel like this is what we do as a board and this is my thought, what we do as a board is a service to the community. And this is one small way that we can put a little more skin in the game as we go ahead. But again, this is just my viewpoint, and that's why I wanted to bring it up for discussion.
Are you going to make a motion, Scott?
I haven't heard from, I just want to make.
I was thinking have a motion and then we can have further discussion on this.
You're muted.
Whoop, one too many key presses. I would like to make a motion to approve the 2021 board member stipend at $0. I would like to make another motion to approve the 2021 board chairperson stipend at $0.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, so with that, is there discussion? Stephanie?
So mine goes along the same lines as Dave. I want to make sure that we're 100% sure that even just $1, because then I'm just thinking about if there were some concern to come out of this, then it's not a zero compensation. We were paid $1. So I just want to verify that we are okay with the $0 amount and that there isn't a minimum.
Yeah, I'm looking at the description in board book, and it says Minnesota Statute 123.33 amended in 1973 governs compensation for school board members. The basic components of the law are members and officers of the board shall receive such compensation as may be fixed by the board. The board must vote the compensation annually, usually at this organization meeting, and it is not automatic. And then it goes into our compensation and that it is subject to federal and state taxes, that mileage and expenses are paid outside of compensation as applicable, not really applicable for us, and that it is permissible for board members to participate at their own expense in the district's benefit insurance, namely medical, life, dental, at our own expense.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going off of, but I see Jen Siebert is still on the line and perhaps she has more insight into this, or perhaps I just dropped a hot potato in her lap. I don't know.
All right, Dave.
I guess I'd go along with it if Scott would just say, if we check with the legal staff and if they tell us otherwise, amend the motion.
Okay, Jen, I saw you came off of video, so.
To my knowledge, you can set the pay at $0, but I would like to just confirm that.
All right, I would like to amend my motion then to set the board compensation for all directors and all positions on the board at $0 unless we find that $0 is not accepted, at which case we would set it to the lowest minimum acceptable, assuming that that would be $1.
I agree with the amended and second that.
So is there more discussion? All right. So seeing none, all those in favor of setting the board member compensation for 2021 at $0, provided that we are legally able to do so, let's say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, next up is the Hastings online learning notification.
All right, so getting to the part of the board book. So in board book, you've got a simple letter that basically says, well, it does say, to whom it may concern, the administration and Board of Education fully supports the application for ISD 200 to expand online learning for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. The district assumes all responsibility to act as the provider to the Hastings Online Academy. So I know that Jen earlier said we were going 5th through 12th grade, but we want the letter to say that we're comprehensive K-12 in support of that. So what I'm asking for is a motion to approve this as support. This letter goes in as part of our application packet. And it basically is just a signification that the board has been read into the fact that we're going for this application and approval, and that the board supports the application for online programming.
So move.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, and last up is the designation of combined polling locations, which Ms. Peters had gotten on to speak to earlier. So I guess at this point, since we would need to read a resolution for this, if we have discussion about it, we should have that now. Scott?
Can someone remind me, because this is not the first time that we have had this conversation, and Kelsey, as I recall, in previous years, you have brought up similar similar concerns about voter participation. Can someone remind me what the cost per polling site is to the district?
I knew you were going to ask that. It's the one thing I don't have. I don't know if Jen has it.
For some reason,
the minute your hand went up, I was like, "Oh, he's going to ask the cost."
For some reason, I want the number 10,000 sticks in my head.
I think that
it's
was
around
total.
That. Yeah.
That's for total or per polling location.
I'm not sure about that, but I do know that the cost changes whether it's depending upon what year it falls, right? So if it's an off year, it's more expensive, but if we can tag on to an on year, then it's less. I don't know if Jen Subert has that or is able to pull it or not.
So I see her laughing, but that is one of the questions. Oh, she does not.
She does not have it.
This is one of the questions that I have, or that I think we need to have a discussion about, and Scott is right. I have voted against this for the past 2 years. So, and I actually do have a graph to share. I sent it to Becky so she can share a screen. So I'll ask her to do that in a second. But if we are talking about this being cost savings, I think one of the discussions we should have is, why do we do board elections on the off years where the school district is responsible for the bulk of this polling cost? Not only is it more expensive for the district, but it also has a much, much lower voter turnout rate. And so I think having discussions about why it's done in these odd year elections versus the even years is something we should talk about, because what it really means is the school board members are elected by a small minority of voters. You know, we get 20 to 30% voter turnout if we're lucky, and that's really low. I also think Melanie had discussed kind of how this can disenfranchise some of the rural voters. And overall, the way that the school board elections are set up with all being at-large seats, this already favors candidates who live in the city of Hastings and have connections to, you know, a larger neighborhood of people, that bigger social networks and things like that. And so between that and then not having polling locations in the rural communities, I think that this really does disenfranchise voters. Becky, if you would be able to share your screen. I've talked about this before. So I used 3 years of data to look at voter turnout rates. And in order to find those, I had to pick years in which there was a yes/no question on the ballot, because otherwise with the school board elections, because you can pick more than one candidate, it's really hard to tease out how many voters there are. So if you look at 2011 and 2013, the voter turnout rate in the city of Hastings compared to the townships, which townships are orange, are really similar. But once we switched that, you can see in 2017, the huge difference in voter turnout rates between the rural community and those in the city of Hastings. And I think to me, that's a really big deal. And while yes, it may make it more difficult to pass levies, for example, I don't think that the way to pass legislation is by silencing voices. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, which is why I continue to vote against this. And I do think that it's something we need to have larger conversations about.
So Kelsey, just a question on this. When we're talking our township populations, what are we talking about there in terms of numbers? Is that like, I thought I remembered it being like 6,000?
Yeah, let me pull it up. I have it in Excel. So the total number of registered voters in the townships is right around 6,000.
Right, and of that, how many? So of that, if I'm reading this graph correctly, 27% of that number, so roughly 25%, so call it 1,700 voted in 2011. And then around 1,500 voted in 2013. And
so
then and then around.
So in 2011, there were 1,537. In 2013, there were 1,244. And in 2017, there were 927.
Mm-hmm. And did we have any levy in 2017?
Each of those years had a yes/no.
A yes/no levy question.
Yep. Otherwise, you can't tell how many people voted, which is why 2015 is not on there, because there's no way of telling, at least with the data provided by the Secretary of State's office, to see how many individual voters voted.
Right. And in 2017, if I recall, because that was an election year for me as well, and that was a year where the levy was increasing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think also, though, between 2013 and 2017, the state law changed about the way agricultural land was impacted by levies. And there was some amount of redistribution that lifted some of the weight off of agricultural property and made it, because statewide, the issue is getting levies passed through predominantly agricultural areas. So there was a state law that shifted, which did lift a burden off of people, off of agriculture people.
I know that in like the conversations I've had with people who live in the townships, there's a feeling that they're really ignored, that a lot of times in the language we use on the school board, we talk about Hastings and not the Hastings area. And it feels like we leave out a large portion of our district in that way. When we did our superintendent search, I had reached out to people in the townships. Commissioner Slavic, we had talked about this, had helped connect me to some of the influencers to make sure they knew that, to help us get the word out about the survey, to get participation from the townships. And the feedback I had gotten from people at that time was that it was amazing because they feel like they're never reached out to by the school district. And it was really meaningful to them that we were trying to include them in some way because they really do feel like they're not represented by the district. And I think as we move those polling locations out of that rural area, it kind of confirms it in their mind that that's what it feels like to them. I've also heard from people who think that we've done this on purpose in order to pass bonds and levies. And I know that's never been a discussion that we've had as a reasoning for doing this, but that doesn't change that that's how, again, people feel. So I think it's a really important discussion to have. So anyway, we don't need to keep sharing the screen. Thank you, Becky.
I saw that Jen Siebert responded that it's approximately $2,400 per location. And maybe that's where the 10,000 is coming in, is that there would be 4 additional. So we moved from 10 locations to 5 in 2015. So 5 locusts, so 10, so we went from 10 to 5. So we shaved 5 off, which is approximately $12,000, 2,400 times 5. So we saved about $12,000 by doing that, plus the logistics and getting machines in and out.
Plus the staffing, the staffing and logistics and the time of our staff,
right?
To move the sites out and about. I'd like to understand, because the way people voted in 2011, 2013, 2017 is not the way people vote now to the same extent, which is, modified voting to allow early voting, just dropping in for multiple weeks prior to the election, at convenience. I mean, speaking as a township person, I remember when we went down to 5, and the next day after it got published, Denmark Township contacted me and said, "Why the heck did you leave us up here? Why are we not combined? Why do we have to run an election and nobody else does on the township side?" So, I mean, that's a piece too. That the reliance on a site on a day, it's just not as strong.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to, being as I've never voted this way, in a matter such as this, is there a mail-in option? Can I request a ballot to be sent to me?
Yep, you can absentee ballot. You can, for a couple, 3 weeks, I don't remember the exact number of days, you can go to the district office and vote at the district office during regular business hours, and even some Saturdays, I think it was staffed. So yeah, much like you would vote in another election, you can do the same thing.
Sure.
To a school board.
Yep.
Sure.
There is still early voting, but there are a number of years where the discussions with school board members and such, I mean, you don't hear those forums until almost right before the election. And so then you're still left into this period where you may have to drive 25 minutes into Hastings and back and do an early vote, but it's still harvest season once you've been able to hear from school board members and actually hear what their positions are and figure out who you want to vote for. And really, our school board elections are not competitive to the level where people are even aware that there may be a school board election coming up. If you're not in the city and seeing all of the signs everywhere, you may not be aware that there's an election you should be voting in. But I would be curious why we have odd year elections anyway.
Oh, we have odd year elections, and you can check with MSBA because you can get levies and bonds passed in odd years. Because how do you raise how do you raise public awareness about a bond and a levy in the face of a presidential election?
Right.
Well,
That's exactly why you do that.
I mean, that's it. It's like, you're just Superman peeing into the wind. And you can check with MSBA on that, and that's why it is. I know. What do I know about that?
Honestly,
that's a very colorful metaphor.
that's the understanding I've always had about it. And if I tend to believe in odd year elections, one, because I like getting levies and bonds passed, because I like having meaningful conversations with people who have the time and space to participate in a meaningful conversation, whether it's on the radio or through a newspaper or through phone calling or whatever. You know, people who are ready to receive that information. And I want an informed electorate. And whether that's a high number or a low number, I want an informed electorate. And I think it would be really challenging, more challenging, to run as a school board person in the face of all of those other elections. And just, I mean, you'd need more of a personal network.
I'd like to interject two things, if I may. First, I'd like to agree with Lisa. I think that the off years, Kelsey, honestly work effectively in the sense that those people that are voting in those off years are actually, to Lisa's point, they have paid attention. They are out for a specific purpose. I think that we do a disservice to some certain other things, the school board, other things like that, if it's an election year or a midterm election where people they're sitting there in front of the ballot. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I'll just throw this in while I'm at it. It becomes very much a while I'm at it type of vote, I think, on those years, because they just happen to be the polls for a reason, having nothing to do with the levy or the school board. That's my first point. The other thing I'd like to interject and just throw out there is, I feel as if I want to be very careful that we are not making excuses, whatever the excuse, for disenfranchising even one individual. And we're talking about rural versus this, but this could easily be a certain demographic of people or a certain group of culture of people that for whatever reason, based on a date or a time, we come up with an excuse over $6,000 a year to disenfranchise anyone that wants to have the right to vote. That's something that I'm very passionate about for a myriad of reasons, about not allowing someone the opportunity to vote if they want to, and not making it as convenient for them as that we can possibly do, as long as it's reasonable.
So I want to point out too, so I'm taking a look at the resolution right now, and the 5 different locations, 5 different locations that we currently have, and they are at the heart of Hastings. Who's to say, could we spread that out? We could still maybe have the 5, but spread it out so that it does reach the different townships, north, south, east, and west of us. So maybe that's an option too. I don't know.
So they have to be at locations that have previously been approved for polling places. So because we had this issue, it used to be at Tilden, and then we had to switch it the last time we had voted on this because Tilden wasn't one of the standard polling places during.
Once the city stopped that location, then we couldn't use it either.
So we're limited in that based on where we can go. So it's really these locations in Hastings or moving them out to the typical locations in the townships where they have their elections.
Yeah, which is the township hall.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense too. And then
so then you push way out.
Yeah, if could I go vote in Marchand Township, being a Rivanna Township member? I don't know how that works, but that just trying to.
Well, that'd be a combined polling place question, right? Like you could say, right, we're going to make Marchand Township Hall the spot, and it's going to be the spot for. Whatever the townships are, but then you're even more consolidating the Hastings ones, right? Like if you're going to stay with 5 and you're going to put somebody out, to Denmark, which we'll get our 300 people will come, and maybe we'll pull a few people that work in Cottage Grove. I don't know.
But if our argument is that people in the townships can vote early so that they don't have to come into Hastings on election day, and we consolidate Hastings more, then you say, but the Hastings folks can also go and vote early and make that more convenient for themselves if they don't want to switch their polling places or things. So,
well, right, but we have to identify their polling places. So if the
Yes.
point is we stay with 5, then we have to pull some portion to a different place, right?
Yep. But
And if we
having
wanna
someone
spread
in
out and have 5.
Hastings, having someone in Hastings drive 5 extra minutes is different than having someone in the townships drive 25 or 30 minutes to get into Hastings.
And that may or may not be the actual distribution you end up with. And part of the challenges we have to fix on the sites today. And we ran into this last year too, which is by the time we had the kind of conversation about combined bowling places, it was on the day that we had to vote on it.
Yes, but Becky, if you'll notice, this is already past December 31st, which is when we had been told previously we had to have this decision by. Becky, in doing her research on this, said we actually have 90 days before the election, which would mean this summer, when she did her research.
So don't you get the exact same like reminder emails from MSBA that says, remember to put polling places on your January ballot? Or maybe they said to put it in your December ballot. But I feel like I read multiple times from MSBA. Was that just a general rule of thumb so we don't forget? Or was that accurate from them?
Becky, do you have insight on this?
Yeah, we get it, Becky. We get that email. I get that email. It comes from MSBA.
Yep, I get the same ones.
You know that, and it's not coming. I mean, maybe you get other MSBA mailings. I don't know if I get it because I used to be a chair, and Scott gets it because he used to be a chair, and they never purged the emails. I don't know, but
nope, I got it too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So Dave's got it too. So then it just says, "Hey, remember. Hey, remember. Hey, remember."
So based on what Becky was telling us, I don't know if she's able to jump on, but that, like Kelsey said, can actually change the polling locations up to 90 days prior to the vote.
Okay, so you can change them? Like we could adopt them today, but then you can change them? I mean, do we have to, maybe that's different. So we have to take some action on this year?
Yeah, so according to MSBA, what you can do is you can approve the polling locations. And if you were to change any, or if you were to add any, you just have to make sure that you do it at least 90 days prior to the election. So the election is on November 2nd. So that would mean July 2nd is the last day that we could do that. And then we just have to send mailings to the people, informing them that, hey, this has changed or this has been added, so that people are aware of that.
To which people?
The constituents in the areas affected. So if you say we're going to change the combined polling place, for Denmark, from, this location in Hastings to the Denmark Town Hall, then you would send the mailings out to those people that it affects.
And we have to do that?
Yes.
And are we able to identify those people easily?
I don't
know the answer to that.
I don't either. That sounds like a
the Secretary of State's office must have some listing about.
I would think there's probably helper ways to.
There's probably ways to get at it.
Well, the Secretary of State's office has a list of all of the eligible voters in our district. And so that would have their addresses and such.
Yeah,
I think one of the things we have to remember, folks, is if we go to the townships and the cities that are included here, we have to make sure we have buy-in. Like Lisa said before, with Denmark, okay, we went away from Denmark Township Town Hall. And what did you say your folks had said up there?
Well, I said the first time we modified this and combined it, we combined everybody south up into Hastings somewhere, right? And we said, oh, Denmark is odd. Those people, me, they work in the cities. They all drive north. They never come through Hastings. So we left Denmark Town Hall as a voting location. And it stands alone because we're Washington County and stuff. Well, then the Denmark staff called and said, how come everybody else got to be combined? How come we have to serve as a polling place? It's this number of people. It's an odd year. We already don't work that year. You know, what's, you know,
I guess
they wanted to be combined when
that's
everybody
what I'm
else was
thinking.
combined.
Some of those, the townships where we have election judges that, you know, work in the townships anyway, you know, we have to get buy-in, make sure that the townships are on board for that.
I think that's a good point, Dave. I think
So one way to go about this maybe is to consider approving the way it's written now, and then make sure that this is at least a work session discussion, and how you want to go about attacking this, and whether it truly is something, and what information do we need to know more about before we would make a change for whatever reason.
Becky?
Well, I'm just wondering, do we have to approve it tonight? It's still January. Can we talk about it, get more information, work on it in a work session, reach out to the town halls, townships to see if they're interested? And if we want to reach out to these members and give them opportunity to be available to vote in their townships halls. So do we have to vote on this tonight? That seems like we're a lot of up in the air on everything. So does it have to be?
Yeah, but do
more
we
information?
Yeah, do we know that the locations that we have in the document tonight, do we know that those would remain? I guess if the answer there is yes, then I think we could move ahead with this tonight. And if we want to create a table item for a future meeting, so we can address it at a work session and then have a table item that we can pick up at our next board meeting.
And then have more information so that there's not all this go back and forth. Let's get the information that we need.
Except we do have to take action on it.
Well,
I
then
mean, to
do
your
that
base
tonight,
point, we do have to take action. We have to adopt something about polling places today.
Then say this is our 5 and then
that-
addendum if needed to then we have a work session and say that if we're going to reach out for more information, we get that, get the cost. If we don't like it, or, you know, we just talk to the, you know, the townships, the halls, wherever. And if we agree on something at the work session, move it to an action item for a meeting in January.
I think we just have to have that portion done before, what, July 2nd. Everything else is covered.
Yeah.
So to create a bookmark for this, if you will, can we put verbiage around we are going to revisit our polling places at a upcoming work session with an eye towards this being an action item at a future board meeting? Can we put words to that and put that as a table item so that we don't lose track of this? Because it's important, and I don't want,
Well, I see Bob's hand moving, which I think means he's writing a note.
Yes.
Yes, I am. For future action. I don't see how it would fit in the resolution. I think the resolution is the resolution.
Right. I think it would have to be
a kind of statute type language. Yeah. But I think we just make an organizational commitment, a board commitment. And we could probably even tonight say, you know, our real timeline on this is, you know, we'll take action by the March meeting or something. I'm just making up a date that's not drop dead really close to the actual deadline.
Yeah,
we just have to hold ourselves accountable.
I guess I would have a couple questions on that. One, if we adopt this tonight, because one of the polling locations is almost all of the townships combined, with Nininger being an exception. That one gets collapsed with Ward 2's polling location. But so if we do that, do we have to send a postcard then after tonight saying a change? And then if we change to re-expand and open the polling locations in the townships, do we need to send a second postcard? Because then I'm wondering if, as far as that notification goes, if now that becomes like or can we just send a postcard once after we determine in March?
I'm curious why we would have to send a postcard on this resolution, given that this is the same as what we have.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
The
Because
last time, so there's no
Okay.
change.
There's no change.
So there's no change. If we approve it as is tonight, there's no change. There's no postcard. But we as a board are making a commitment here that we are going to reach out for more information to these townships, reach out for more information about the voting trends, et cetera, to get more information to then take this up at a work session and say, okay, maybe we need to add in 3 more, or maybe 2 more, you know, maybe all of them. I don't know what the right answer is. That's what we're going to figure out. And then if we make a change after going through that work session, if we come out of that with an action item for a future board meeting, then postcards would need to be sent, or whatever format they're in, notifications would need to be sent.
Public notice of some means.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
I don't know. I just imagine as a township resident, I feel like it would get difficult. Like there's a lack of consistency, right? That on the even years you vote one place and in the odd years you vote a different place.
I think that's true inside the city too for some people. Scott.
Yes. Yes.
Depending on the
Very
size
true.
of the election.
And I always go to the wrong place.
City people, city folk vote at different places depending on the size of the election. Not all of them, but many.
Yep. And yes, it does get confusing.
The key is to go where Scott didn't.
I just think about, I should go here. And it's like, no, I don't go to that one. I went to that one last time. I go to the other one.
The hard part about that, Scott, is they send you a card that says where you're supposed to go, and you never look at it. That's
Would
what
that be
my
a
problem is.
postcard? Would that be a postcard, Dave?
Oh, I look at it as I put it up on the board in our mudroom, and then I promptly forget about it as I walk out the door.
I clearly hear you.
So I'm going to say I feel like I don't have enough information to make any modifications on this right now. And I understand that we have a statutory obligation to approve polling places for this year. And so I'm going to make a motion to approve the combined polling place resolution as it's worded in the agenda.
Second.
And then the only discussion that I have around this is that what I heard from the board is that we have a agreement that we are going to take this up at a future work session as we gather more information. So in no way, shape, or form is this final. It is merely we are moving forward with what we know tonight.
Right. This is moving forward with a statutory obligation and reaching out to the townships to hear from them about whether or not this is the right choice for them.
The townships and the cities included.
Yeah, so like Hampton and New Shire.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, so then I guess with that, Stephanie, if you will read the resolution.
I would be delighted to. All right. So hang on tight, kids. It's going to be a long one. Lisa Hedin introduced the following resolution and move for the adoption of the, hold on, I got to find the title of this one. It's not. The designation of combined polling locations pursuant to due call and notice thereof a regular meeting of the school board of Independent School District number 200 Hastings Public Schools, state of Minnesota, was held in said school district on January, would that be 6th? 2021 instead of 27th at 6 p.m. resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 200, State of Minnesota, as follows. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 205 Alpha .11, the precincts and polling places for school district elections are those precincts located within the boundaries of the school district which have been established by the cities or towns located in whole or in part within the school district. The board hereby confirms those precincts and polling places are established by those municipalities. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 205 Alpha .11, the board may establish a combined polling place for several precincts for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. Each combined polling place must be a polling place that has been designated by a county or a municipality. The following combined polling locations are established to serve the precincts specified for all school district special and general elections not held on the same day as a statewide election. The combined polling places for the election shall be as followed. There's Hope Lutheran Church, Our Savior's Lutheran Church, United Methodist Church, St. Philip's Lutheran Church, and St. John's Lutheran Church. This combined polling place serves, so see section 2.3.2 of the election manual regarding changing polling places in the case of an emergency or if the polling place is no longer available. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 2015A.09, the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the same day as a statewide election between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. See Section 3.6 of the election manual regarding certain restrictions on voting hours. The clerk is directed to file a certified copy of this resolution with the county auditor of each of the counties in which the school district is located in whole or in part within 30 days after its adoption. As required by Minnesota Statute Section 204B.16 subdivision 1A, the clerk is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice of new polling place locations at each affected household with at least one registered voter in the school district whose school district polling place location has been changed. The notice must be a non-forwardable notice mailed at least 25 days before the date of the first election in which it will apply. A notice that is returned as undeliverable must be forwarded immediately to the appropriate county auditor, who shall change the registrant's status to challenged in the statewide registration system. The motion for the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly seconded by Dave Pemble. And then we will proceed with a roll call vote, starting with Becky Beisel.
Yes.
Brian Davis.
I'm abstaining.
Lisa Hedin.
Yes.
Scott Gergen.
Yes.
Dave Pemble.
Yes.
Stephanie Malm, no. And Kelsey Waits.
No. Okay. And so that was our last action item for tonight. So future board meeting dates. Policy committee just met last night, and so we are set to have 2 Tuesday meetings every month, and those will be regular, and so those are all mixed in there. And then we have a facility committee meeting set up as well, and our next regular board meeting is set up for January 27th. Scott?
Being as we have, as I'm newly leading the finance committee and I was not on the finance committee previously, who is the previous leader that can do a handoff with me to let me know kind of, because I'm sure there's probably things that need to be handled. Because
Brian.
right now we don't have any meetings. Okay, Brian, would it be okay if I reach out to you individually and we can kind of do a handoff as to where things are at? Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Superintendent McDowell?
One thing with future meetings, the question I have is, do we want to consider adding a work session between now and February, or waiting until February?
We don't currently
Any
have a work
thoughts?
session in February.
We don't have a work session
well,
until
no.
February?
Got it. Okay.
And that's because of the organizational meeting. So if we wanted to have a work session mixed in and start talking about governance and moving forward with the board's role and things like that, working one in.
And that unfortunately would mean that it would either need to be next week, Wednesday, the 13th, or the 20th.
Can we have a meeting on Inauguration Day? I don't have the list of unapproved dates in front of me.
Yeah, we might not. That might be an unapproved date. I don't know for sure either. And if we have to wait
I
till
don't think
February, we
so.
wait till February. I just wanted to throw it out there.
I don't think that that's one of them, but I can check really fast if you guys give me 2 minutes.
Yep. Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't think that was one of them since it didn't require people going to the polls and it wasn't a federal holiday.
So the intent of a February work session would primarily be governance.
January work session.
January work session. A work session prior to February.
Yeah, I didn't know that if because we don't really have a work session in January listed, did we want to put one in or wait?
I think
till
I'd have to
February?
understand what we wanted to get done.
Well, I think.
I mean, if it is governance, then that's cool.
Yeah, I think we've got some things to work on, right? We really haven't had another meeting with regard to, our 60-day plan, with regard to what do we, that start, stop, and improve section, defining what that looks like, and those types of things.
Right, so Becky says the 20th does work. The 18th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day is the only day in January we can't meet. Dave?
Can we, work sessions don't have to start at the 6 p.m. if I remember right. Can we shuffle the time around? I've got a couple of commitments on the 20th already, because knowing that there was no work session for District 200, there's some other, the 917 stuff is piling up. So
Is the 13th any better? Or is the 13th a no-go for other folks?
if let's 7 o'clock would be better on the 13th.
So 7 o'clock on the 13th,
Yep.
or what time on the 20th?
I just assumed it'd be later, much later.
Okay, yeah, so that's probably a no-go then.
Another option would be, and I don't know how you've done this before, but we could do we could do an hour before the meeting on the 27th. If you wanted to combine a work session and a board meeting day.
I'm open to, I'm very flexible in the month of January, so any of those work for me.
Yeah, I keep Wednesday nights open, so any of that's fine for me as well.
So
and if we need to wait till February, then we need to wait till February.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to throw it out there.
No, I think I like the idea of holding it, a time and even maybe making it specific to the 60-day plan and keeping it at a constrained time frame, just so that we start to get into that rhythm. I think, and I guess maybe it is time dependent. I'm very flexible in January, but we could do from 5 to 6. on the 27th and then go into the work session. That's just because I hold Wednesdays.
I have a harder time getting on at 5. I could just be late, or you guys could do it without me. It's just harder for me to get home from St. Paul and be ready by 5.
Yeah. No, I don't want to plan for you not to be able to be there. I want us to accommodate.
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
I mean, I can't guarantee it. We've been really busy and short-staffed, so I can't say that I'll be there. I couldn't even get here on time tonight. So
What about the 13th on like 7-ish?
Just do it for an hour.
Yeah.
I can't do that week. I'm available the week of the 19th though, and even that Monday, Tuesday, 25, 26 January.
So Dave, what time did you say we would have to shift it on the 20th for you to be able to make it work?
It would be after 7 for sure. Probably after 8, really. For me. So, or otherwise, if we could do it earlier in the daytime sometime, but that doesn't fit into your guys' schedule. That's the problem.
How big I mean, this is a little bit of magic dust, but how big is the agenda on the 27th? Could we have the board meeting start at 6, hopefully be done by 7:30. We could reconvene for as long as Dr. McDowell doesn't crush our agenda.
We can do a short agenda, and I mean, we can try to keep as short of an agenda as we can on the 27th as for the business part. If people want to do that, but then again, at the same time, so that's the 27th. I think our February work session is the following week, is it not?
No, it's 2 weeks later. It's the
2
10th.
weeks out.
Oh, the 10th. All right. I mean, we can.
How long is the list already for the 27th?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not longer. It's not a list.
Both right now.
Oh, okay.
It's an infinitely small list.
Yeah. It's,
Well,
at
then
this
I would
point
go
in
for
time,
that idea.
It's not finalized, and it's not long at this point.
I would go for that idea if we can squeeze it in afterwards for an hour.
So maybe we try to go 6 to 7, try to get a board meeting and business meeting done in an hour, and go from 7 to 8.
6 to 7:30, and then do 7:30 to 8:30. And then if we end our business meeting early, we can all go grab a snack and a restroom break. Because we kind of have to commit to a start time, right, for a public
Right.
Yep.
statement. So I would say 6 and 7:30. Be done by 8:30. I mean, we practically did it today. We're at 8:05. We're all holding in there.
Okay.
Let's shoot for that.
Sounds good.
All right. We can do that.
All right. Well, then with that, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Because I almost forgot we needed to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And there we go. Meeting
Have a good
is
one.
adjourned.
Take care.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thanks.
night.
All right.
Good night.